Hello, class. We have now reached chapter 20 in the Gospel of Matthew. Verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. When he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius for the day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And to those he said, You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right I will give you. And so they went. Jesus told a parable in which we see here in the commentary in the bullets, in which the landowner went out early in the morning and hired men to work in his vineyard for the day at an agreed price of 1 denarius, the normal daily pay for a laborer. Later, about the third hour, around 9 o'clock in the morning, we would say in our time, the landowner encouraged others in the marketplace also to work in the vineyard, not for the stipulated ways, but for whatever would be right. Now let's look at verse number 5 in this parable. Again, Jesus says, he went out about the 6th and 9th hour and did the same thing. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing around, and he said to them, Why have you been standing here idle all day long? They said to him, Because no one hired us. He said to them, You go into the vineyard too. When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last group to the first. Then those hired about the 11th hour came. Each one received a denarius. When those hired first came, they thought that they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they grumbled at the landowner, saying, These last men have worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden and the scorching heat of the day. And so here we look at the commentary. The landowner employed more workers about the 6th hour, 3 p.m., and even more at the 11th hour, 5 p.m., when only 1 hour was left for labor. When it came time evening, that is around 6 o'clock, for the landowner to pay the workers, he began with those who had worked the shortest amount of time and paid each of them 1 denarius. When those who worked the entire amount of time came for their reckoning, they thought they would receive more than a denarius. They had labored all day and borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. They had agreed, however, to work for a stipulated amount, and that is what they received. Now we look at verse number 13. But he answered and said to one of them, Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go, but I wish to give this last man the same as you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with what is my own? Or is your eye envious because I am generous? So the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. The landowner argued that he had the right to do what he chose with his money. That's the commentary here. He reminded them that they should not be envious of his generosity toward those who had labored only briefly. By this illustration, Jesus was teaching that the matter of rewards is under the sovereign control of God, the landowner in the parable. God is the one before whom all accounts will be settled. Many who have prominent places will someday find themselves demoted, and many who often find themselves at the end of the line will find themselves promoted to the head of the line. The last will be first, and the first will be last. In the final accounting, the Lord's analysis will carry the greatest and only important weight. Now let's read verse 17. As Jesus was about to go up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside by themselves, and on the way he said to them, Behold, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and will hand him over to the Gentiles to mock and scourge and crucify him. And on the third day, he will be raised up. Now let's look at the commentary. One could never say Jesus ever did not prepare his disciples for his death. At least 3 times already he had announced that he was going to die. He was now on the road to Jerusalem. Once again, he told his disciples that death waited him in that city. Here he spoke the first time of his betrayal, mocking, flogging, and crucifixion. But he also reminded them that death was not the end for him, for he would rise again the third day. The disciples gave no response to the Lord's words. Perhaps they could not bring themselves to believe the Lord was indeed going to be treated in that way. Then we see in verse 20, the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to Jesus with her sons, bowing down and making a request of Jesus. And he said to her, "What do you wish? What do you wish?" She said to him, "Command that in your kingdom these 2 sons of mine may sit, one on your right and one on your left." But Jesus answered her, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink?" They said to him, "We are able." The 2 sons. He said to them, "My cup you shall drink, but to sit on my right hand and on my left, this is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father." Now look at the commentary in these bullets. The mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus with her 2 sons, bowed before him. When Jesus inquired what her request was, she asked that her 2 sons might be granted places of favor in his kingdom, one seated at his right hand and one at his left. Jesus did not correct her concerning the fact of his coming kingdom. Rather, he addressed a question to her 2 sons, who apparently had urged their mother to make the request. Jesus asked if they were able to drink the cup he was about to drink. Jesus was speaking of his coming trials and his death, as he would be betrayed and die on a cross. They both replied, "We are able." Jesus indicated they would indeed share the cup of suffering, death with him. However, granting positions of honor is not Jesus' prerogative, but the Father's. So, let's look at the next slide, verse number 24. And hearing this, the 10 became indignant with the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. It is not this way among you, but whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." Now look at the commentary. When the 10 disciples heard the request by James and John's mother, they became indignant. They were probably sorry they had not thought of it first. But Jesus called the 12 together and reminded them of some important principles. While rulers lorded over others, the disciples would not do this. Not supposed to do that. Greatness in the kingdom does not come through rulership, but through service. There was no greater example of this principle than the Lord himself. He did not come into the world to be served, but to serve, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom to many. Here is the first clue what the death of Christ would accomplish. Now it was clear that Jesus' substitutionary death would pay the price for sin. And now we read verse number 29. As they were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed Jesus, and 2 blind men sitting by the road, hearing that Jesus was passing by, cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd sternly told them to be quiet, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." And Jesus stopped and called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, we want your eyes to be open. We want our eyes to be open." Moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes, and immediately they regained their sight and followed him. Now look at the commentary in these bullets. In a final display of his authority, before he reached Jerusalem, Jesus healed 2 blind men near the city of Jericho. The 2 blind men cried out for help when they heard Jesus was passing by. Their appeal was based on the fact that he is the Lord and the Son of David. By using this title, they were appealing to him as the Messiah. They persisted in spite of a rebuke from the crowd until Jesus stopped and called them out. When Jesus asked what they wanted, they simply replied they wanted their sight. Jesus had compassion on them immediately. It is interesting that this extended in this section in which Jesus was teaching the disciples things they would need after his death, ended with a demonstration of his authority. Truly, Jesus is to be believed because he is the Messiah. And that concludes this lecture on chapter number 20.